thank you for making an effort and coming along this afternoon. And it's lovely to see some new faces and people that we've known a long time, that we've not seen for a bit, and people that have just come along to see what's happening and what we're actually up to. So this is about the great metropolis of Cleveleys. We always call it the centre of the universe because it's the centre of our universe, isn't it? It's the centre of our universe. There's lots of things happening in Cleveleys this year, and I thought we'd start off with that, which is quite apt. I said this at a meeting the other day. I think we've got a bit of anybody, somebody, and nobody. Because it quite often happens that you quite often get people standing back and saying, oh well, I'll not do that because it's my job, or I'm going to leave that because the council's all that. And you don't know everything, do you, Sandra?
Sorry, I was reading. I really like that. I post that as like photo for every single complaint.
Absolutely. But it's true, isn't it? Because everybody thinks that the council should do everything.
Yes.
Which is fine if you want to tip all your wages up and have £2.50 back in pocket money, because that's pretty much what it would amount to. So, after some practice, I've kind of got to a point where I've become anybody, somebody, and nobody all at once. And we've stuck our neck out a little bit in Cleveleys and decided that we're just going to crack on and do what we can see needs doing. And most of the time, I'll tell you all guys later. Sandra's from the council, but she's a good around here. She's an ally. Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, that's kind of beside the point. Over the last, I would say, well, it started just before lockdown, just before COVID. Working with the council, working with the economic development team and the regeneration people and everybody, we started putting together this Cleveleys Together group. And hopefully you will have already heard of that. It's not being talked about a lot. It's not being publicised widely because at the moment it's not got to a point where what it's doing needs to be within the public realm. But it's a strategic board, so that means basically that they're looking at long-term things and they're looking at things that will unravel over a period of time, and proper money, as I call it. So you'll have heard lots of talk about levelling up grants and one thing and another, so that's where these come in. If it's a smaller amount of money, then see me, as you would say. But the other important thing as well is that it gives the town something that we've not previously had, which is the higher level of support and permissions. Because while we scurry about planting plants and sweeping up and doing jobs that are straightforward and easy to do, and we can do without it being an issue, obviously when it comes to anything any more substantial, you've got to get permission. You can't just rack up in the middle of Cleveleys and start digging a hole, for example. So this Cleveleys Together group has got quite a wide representation on it. I'm Madam Vice, as you might say. So we've got quite a few different people that are represented within this. So we've got the college, the MP sits on it because currently the way that funding is allocated needs MP veto, so you need them on board. But it's not a political group, and it's not a place where we all end up sort of playing red and blue and falling out over politics. So there's a variety of different people. There's the lovely Liz here, my partner in crime, who is the community rep. Daniel from Phillips Jewellers is the person that runs the traders group in the town centre. Aaron's just mentioned transport. Jane Cole is, well, anybody that knows her, she's an amazing woman. And she's really helpful. So, we'd already done that, we'd already got that sorted out, and the Cleveleys Together group has been doing some background work. There's been a transport study done currently, which is trying to work out where the traffic flows and who uses what and who uses different types of transport. There's been a long-term business plan, a strategic plan put together, which looks at the town over the next 15 years, and some of the things that we might be able to do, some of the things that we might not want to do. And I suppose getting a proper grip on, you know, what is actually within the town. And then that is at what they call a strategic level, so that's all kind of management and organisation and top level stuff. And then on a day-to-day basis, we've been getting organised as a group of volunteers. So one of the problems that we've had previously, you'll know that we've got the Care for Cleveleys group, the people that go out doing all the weeding and the sweeping and the cleaning and generally keeping it looking nice on a regular basis. But it's not a constituted group, it's just it's a group of volunteers that work together. It came out of a coastal community grant that we got for the town. And it's done all of work and made a really big difference and really transformed a lot of elements. But it's not constituted, it's not a charity, it's not a limited company, it's not official as such. So that stops you from doing quite a lot of things and certainly applying for most grants. So we've got a town centre, Cleveleys Association of Trade and Commerce, I believe is its study name. And that's the old Chamber of Trade that goes back donkey's years. And they, at one time, were really active and did an awful lot of work in the town. But in recent years, that's become inactive and basically just ticks over as a limited company. When I say limited company, it's limited by guarantee and it's for the benefit of the town. It's not a profit-earning company. So the existing groups have come together and we're going to use the Cleveleys Association of Trade and Commerce business, the bank account and whatnot. And with that and Care for Cleveleys, the Traders Forum and Cleveleys together, we will all work as one sort of big group that rolls our sleeves up and actually gets things done within the town. There you go, that's us. So we'll still, our normal daily name will still be Care for Cleveleys, so everybody knows that, everybody knows what we're doing. It's what the Facebook group's called. So we will still continue to use that, but Cleveleys Town Centre Group is the collective of all the different organisations. So in 2023, well, I think a lot of you probably know that I'd been caring for my mum last year who sadly died in September. So that has obviously taken a lot of my time and stopped me from doing a lot of different things. Since she passed away, I can only say it's slightly unleashed the devil in me, would you agree? Because let's just say I throw myself into doing things. So we've been getting organised as a group for this year and then obviously going forward into the future. So we know the direction that Cleveleys Together is going in. We've pretty much sorted that out. We also know what else is happening within the town. So there's the work that's going on down at Jubilee Gardens and there's other various pockets of activity. But more than anything, we're trying to link everything together because one of the frustrations is we're residents, we live and work within this town. And one of the frustrations is when you get Lancashire County Council running off at a tangent and doing this, and then you get my council running off at a tangent and doing that, and then somebody else will do this and somebody else will do that. And there's obvious crossover between a lot of these projects and activities which are not exploiting you from getting the best out of what you could potentially do. So we're trying to make sure that we're joining things up, like for example, when the YBH management project is finished at Jubilee Gardens, something's going to happen with that park and it's going to be restored back to a park. But we've got an opportunity to make that park an asset again to the town, like it used to be, probably back in the day when people in this room were young and remember the boating lake and all that kind of thing. It won't be the same. It won't be back to boating lakes and all that kind of stuff. But we need something that is a 2020 whatever version of fit for purpose and good for our town. And there's one thing, and I'm not a scout, so I'm not quite sure what you're supposed to do, but you can always be assured that wherever I'm involved, that we will always try to get our best for this town. Is that not right, Liz? Absolutely. It's not about me, it's not about whether I look like I've done something. It's not about whether politically it's the right thing to do, it's what's best for us. Because we live here, we work here, and you can tell us I'm starting to get into this, I'm doing that thing where I warm on the head and the eyes come out on stalks. I can feel myself doing it. So, we've got a work plan. Sadly, I haven't brought it with me. I have a book for everything. This is my Cleveleys book. But when I sent it to the engineer at the council, I said, don't panic. This is not your list, this is my list. And he went, oh! So we've got a plan of what we're going to do this year, and it's all proper, grounded, practical stuff. So we're carrying on with the monthly clean-ups that we do with Care for Cleveleys. We are now introducing a meet-up at the Dickens pub, because one of the things that has been a bit missing is the opportunity to sit and talk to one another and to plan and to plot and to decide what we could do next and realistically what's achievable. So that's what we're going to do. The landlord at the Dickens is really community minded, and he's offered the use of his space. He's even going to make us a room. So we're going to be doing that, and then all the information about everything that we're doing will be on the Care for Cleveleys Facebook group. Everything will be practical and achievable. We're not there's loads of things, absolutely loads of things that you could do, that if I asked all of you now, what would you like to do in Cleveleys, what would you like to see in Cleveleys, I'm sure every one of you would be able to come up with something. But whether or not that would actually be something that we could translate into happening is another completely different kettle of fish altogether. So obviously, if we're going to do more, we need more helpers, and we're also going to need more money. So what are we wanting to do? Well, we want to make a better welcome for the town. We know Cleveleys is a good town. We know that the rents are eye-watchingly expensive because it's a good town. We know that it's busy because it's a good town. And we know that we all love it, and it's a really nice place to visit and to use. But we can't rest on our laurels. It's widely accepted that the way that people use town centres is changing. The way that people shop has changed and is still changing. So we can't just say, oh well, Cleveleys is fine, so it's always going to be fine, because we don't know that that's going to happen for a fact. So we want to make it its best version of itself. And when people come into town, we know Victoria Road West is nice, and we know the central bit looks lovely, but when people come into town, it's what they see first that will either give them a good experience or make them say, what a dump. And that's one of the things that we're going to address. So for example, we've got these Welcome to Cleveleys things. One of them has disappeared underneath the shrubbery at Morrison's, so you can't even see it. And all of them, there are 3, and all of them are green, dark colours against dark backgrounds, so you don't actually see them. You've got to be sort of fairly switched on before you actually see it, and they are nice. There's no reason why they wouldn't welcome people to Cleveleys. So we're going to paint that dog friendliness of the town, because dog owners are a huge section of society that have always got money to spend. You pitch up with your dog, and if people are welcoming and accept your dog, you tend to get your wallet out and start spending money. We want to improve the accessibility, and this is where Cleveleys Together comes in. Because anybody that's pushed a wheelchair or a pram will know that Cleveleys is awful. I know you'll find this really difficult to believe, but I have sworn like a pit man pushing my mum around Cleveleys in a wheelchair, because it is just beyond awful. You've got no idea until you've done it. And it's a town that's got an older population. There's a lot of grandmas that are pushing kids around in prams. So it shouldn't be like that. It should be better. We need to improve the signage as well. And this is something we've been saying collectively for a long time. And somebody else repeated this the other day, that you can't, if you're new and you don't know where you are, you can't find stuff. It's just not obvious. So this year we're going to go back into the national RHS competition. We want to put more planters in the town centre, but that means we need more people to water them. We want less weeds and litter, we want it cleaner and tidier, because local authorities will have, and you'll see this all over the country, local authorities will have their levels of what they class as an acceptable standard. Now, call me picky, but I think we can make Cleveleys better than that. I think we can, between us, we can make it not so bad but inaccurate. That's why I challenged you. And then, of course, we've got the existing planters, and we've got Rossall Road, that big long border, and there's the stuff that we're already doing that needs continuing. So when it comes down to things like planters, the big grey pots in the town centre, they soak water up like a sponge. So they end up being watered on a daily basis. Any new planters that we buy will be self-watering ones. And they only need doing usually once a week, unless we get blistering tropical summers. But they still need watering, they still need attending to. And the better we make the town look, and the more that we put in it to achieve that, the more help that we need. Yeah.
I'm just making sure that obviously they have to be over a certain height to avoid any sort of like dogs eating them or that sort of thing.
Oh yeah. And we buy them from a company that provides commercial planters for town centres all over the country. They're not what we get from the garden centre.
Yeah.
And we're also going to have a bash at decorating Cleveleys as well. So we're going to go bunting-tastic. We are. We've got a surprise installation planned. I'm not going to say anything about that yet, because it might, we're talking apples at the minute, it might be oranges by the time we build it. But we've got an installation planned as part of the In Bloom thing. And we're going to be making bunting as well for the clock shelter at the seafront. We're going to put some bunting inside it. We're going to put some bunting up at the clock garden near to Wilkinson's. And ideally we want to do the bus station as well this year. So anybody that's crafted with a sewing machine or any knitters, anything like that, any crafters, we need you as well. So that'll make quite a difference. The bunting that you see down the high street, strung from poles and lampposts and things, is a whole completely different kettle of fish. And that's a conversation for another day. I think that might be beyond us this year. We'll bite our elephant one bite at a time. So then we come on to events. So you'll know that Cleveleys has been the place that nothing happens. And a lot of that is to do with the weather. Because frankly, when you live in a wind tunnel and the Irish Sea prevails straight down the high street like a wind tunnel, it doesn't sort of fully full of confidence to start organising things. But events nonetheless are back this year, so there's a new organiser for Cleveleys Car Show. And the Cleveleys Together group are doing a new Cars and Cake event. Coffee and Cars is a registered trademark and is very big in Liverpool, did you know? So that's basically something similar but smaller scale, where people that have got anything unusual as a vehicle all rock up in a particular place on a particular day. Everybody looks at the cars and talks about them and gives them polish. And then the people that are interested in that spend a day within the town. And then there's another element that's brewing, which is UK shared prosperity funding. So this shared prosperity funding has been dished out basically to local authorities pretty much all over the country. But rather than saying they've got 3 million to spend for your roads, the local authorities have been told that they've got to put a plan forward and tell central government what they're going to spend the money on. And there are quite strict rules and guidelines around it as well, so it's got to be spent in certain ways on certain things. And there is a pot of money that's allocated for community, arts, environmental, eventy type stuff for Cleveleys. So there'll be a corresponding one for Poulton and Fleetwood and whatnot. So we're looking at the moment about how we're going to use that and how we're going to divvy it up. But the current plan is to do lots of small events rather than do a couple of really big ones. And they just happen to be on that day when it's blowing at 90 miles an hour that way and everything is blown away and cancelled. So we're going to try and do things so that people have got a reason to come to Cleveland, because there's always something happening. It's always an interesting place to come to. I'm talking faster than I thought I was. I need to slow down, don't I? And that includes various different things. It includes things like community engagement, so working with the schools and things like that. Obviously, all this is far too much work for a bunch of volunteers organised by Susan and Les. So there will be some element of contracting people who are actually paid to do some work there. But it's a good opportunity, it's a good chance for us to do different things, try different things, find out what works, find out what doesn't work, and then hopefully when that money's been spent and gone, we can carry on in future, learning from that and then developing it into things that we can actually manage as a community. Which neatly brings me on to Christmas. Such a simple photo and such a nightmare that went into it. I don't know whether anybody came to the Christmas event that we did, but it was such a nice afternoon. We didn't spend any money, we didn't do anything wild and fancy. We had the lovely Kath, who expertly entertained us during the afternoon with her keyboard. Don't know what we'd have done without Kath. Sorry? And lots of singers, yeah, lots of singers, and Jeff was one of them, yeah. So we had a really, really nice afternoon. We were dancing on Victoria Road West, and part of that was to do with the fact that it was so cold we were trying to keep warm. But it was a really nice community event, and that's what we're trying to achieve within this town, because it's all right having a busy business community, but the shopkeepers to some extent are transient. They rent their buildings, they come in, they start trading, and it either goes well and they stop forever, or it goes badly and they're off and they leave within 6 months. But the shopkeepers are not the people that keep this town running. They provide a service that we all use. So it's important that we keep this town vibrant so that they can be commercially successful. But the people that make this town are us. It's the people that live here and the people that move here and the people that come for the day. And if you get into conversation with the day trippers from Bury, they'll all tell you that it's such a nice place. And when we've been asked to describe this town, people have kept saying to us, well, we've all kept saying as a group, it's nice. And we struggle to get much further than nice because that is exactly what it is. It's such a warm, friendly place. So Christmas was back on the cards last year. I'll tell you the potted story, I'll not tell you the full version because we'll be here until next Christmas. So these street lights, I think I might have got a pointer. These street lights are relatively new and were put in when this paving was done outside Iceland. Tesco's as it was. And as a community, we've always been under the impression that nothing can be fastened to those lampposts because they're not strong enough. That's been our widely held belief, and anybody that you'd have asked would have said you can't fasten anything to the lampposts. And any infrastructure like these lights are eye-wateringly expensive. So it's not like popping down to B&Q and getting a string of festoon lights and putting them up and, you know, jobs are good. And we will be mourning this fact in a Cleveleys Together meeting one day and saying nothing ever happens at Cleveleys at Christmas in Cleveleys. And the engineer just happened to say, you should be able to put some lights up on the lamppost because that's how we specified them when we bought them. My eyes nearly fell out of my head. And I went, really? So off we went. That was actually in September last year. So from September to, when did we put them on? December. About 3 months, we actually managed to do all that work and get those lights up, which was a minor miracle in itself. So we had to start with the lighting column manufacturers and get their permission and confirm that they were actually strong enough. Then we had to go back to Lancashire County Council and make sure that they were satisfied with it. We've still not got a proper metered power supply, so we need to do that at 500 quid a pop and we need 3. Unfortunately, we've got some funding left within our coastal community pot, which had been topped up by some fundraising that the co-op had done 2-3 years ago. So we've got a little bit of money left, and then my council actually topped it up for us, so that they made up the balance. And that was how we managed to get some lights up. And it was a mad flat. And the event itself, I think we organised in 3 weeks, literally, we put that together on the goodwill of people that were able and prepared to come along and perform. And as I said, Jeff was one of them, and Kath kept the piano going. So that kind of gave us a bit of a basis to start from. But next year we want to build on that, because one of the recurring themes in Cleveleys is the split across the town centre by the tramway. It creates a natural divide between the two halves of the town. And one of the things that the businesses at the other side of the tramway will tell you is that they always feel left out. People always feel left out if they're not right in that central little bit. But there's been such a small group of volunteers that we've not been able to do anything and cover a bigger area, because Cleveleys is actually quite a big town when you start looking at it on a map. So there's the area over the other side of the tramway, there's the two crescents, they're north and south, aren't they? Yeah, terrible at directions and road names. And then there's other areas as well, so the town itself is actually quite big, so if I were to tell you that those festal lights cost just short of £12,000 and they were fastened onto the existing street lights, so we didn't need to put any actual posts in the floor, it gives you some idea of how much money we're going to need to raise if we're going to make the town look nice in a bigger area. So it's going to be a bit of an uphill task. We're going to see if we can find grant funding to cover the thick end of it, but whether or not we'll be able to is another matter. But that's one of the things that we're looking at. So the guy that put our Christmas lights up actually used to run Blackpool Illuminations, and then he retired and moved on. So he's the one who sorted it all out for us. He's another one that we wouldn't have been able to achieve it without, because without it definitely wouldn't have happened. He's working a project in Morecambe at the moment. I don't know whether you've seen, there's a light festival thing at half term. And I've got him on notice that the first time he's got time to lift his head and take a breath, we need a meeting as soon as possible to talk about Cleveleys in 2023. So there's going to be lots of work and lots of fundraising and lots of effort that's going to be needed to make that grow and develop year by year. Because we've been talking about festoon lights for about five years, easily 5 years, if not longer, as a way to make winter brighter. Because I don't know about you, but it's sunny now. I hate this time of year. When it's grey and every time you open the curtains and you're met with another grey wet sky, and it's dark early and it's dark late and it's just so miserable. So we've done Christmas this year, but what we wanted to do is winter. So ideally what we want to do is to brighten up that period from late October, round about when the clocks change, through to the end of January, when you start to see that change and the year starts to move on and the weather improves. We've got a major tourist attraction 3, 4, 5 miles down the road. There's no reason why we could make Cleveleys a supplementary thing for people that come to Blackpool to enjoy Christmas in Blackpool. We know that during the illumination season, Cleveleys gets a lot of overspill from people that have come to Blackpool for the lights. And one of the things that loads of them do is they get on a tram and they come here. They want to bring more winter cheer to more of the town. As I said, we've got outstanding technical issues to resolve from this year. There's always a boatload of stress and a pile of work that goes at the back of anything that you see happen. And believe me, there's been a boatload of stress and a whole pile of work that's gone into delivering that. But there's lots of potential. There's lots of things that we could do if we're box clever and we work together as a town. So, fundraising. Well, we've got a bit of money in hand because we've not been constituted. Liz has got a safe, and she's got some £10 notes in it. And when people stop the volunteers in Cleveleys and give them some money for plants and things, that all goes in Liz's safe. So we've got a little bit of cash. We've completely wiped out all the coastal community team money, so that's gone. That's gone and more besides. Everything that we do will need some funding at some level. And I think it's fair to say that all the regular volunteers usually end up mapping odd bits and bobs up themselves. No, I certainly do. But things like grants, applying for grants is a bit of a skill in itself, because you've got to do it in a certain way and tick the boxes in the right way. So if anybody's an expert in grant funding, we're looking for them, definitely. We're also wanting the general public. You know, every year there's various different things. There's the Macmillan and Coffee Morning and British Art Foundation do, is it a Red Nose event or something or other. Loads of different charities do their own events where they ask you to go and do a coffee morning with 5 of your friends and you raise 20 quid. All those little pots of money all add together and they all create a bigger whole. And then we've asked if businesses would be able to run events and promotions and things. So you probably saw on Facebook that last year the tramway said that they would run a raffle and an afternoon tea. So we got double bubble out of that one because it was a fundraising event and we also had fun while we were doing it because that's what we like. So we like to get a slice of cake in and a good deal. Tomorrow afternoon we're going to the Shipwreck and probably quite a few of you have got one of their loyalty cards and they'll be selling those over the winter period for £5, which gives you as a customer 10% off your food at the Shipwreck. But all of the money that they've raised by selling those cards is being divided between Pay for Cleveleys and Fleetwood Sea Cadets. So tomorrow afternoon we're going to the Shipwreck to be presented with the dosh. Phillips Jewellers in Cleveleys often run raffles and they just have a raffle on the counter and sell tickets and he's raised quite a lot of money doing that. I know people get fed up and everywhere you go you seem to be facing somebody that's tapping you for money for one thing or another. But I think when you're doing your fundraising in our town, for our town, surely somebody's going to buy a raffle ticket. We've got Ellie, what's your name, sorry? Jordan. Sorry, we've got Hannah, sorry, not Ellie. Hannah and Jordan have come today from McDonald Property Rentals and they're looking at doing some fundraising for us around Easter time. And then we'll be doing our own volunteer run events and projects. Not decided what yet, could be anything. So that's kind of where we're up to. So there's a lot of conversations all going off at once. There's a lot of work being done all at once. There's a lot of goodwill. I must say that this year when we were trying to organise the whole Christmas thing, there's a lot of people within the town that have wanted to join in, wanted to get involved. The businesses are more amenable. And there is a perceptibly different feeling within the town to what there's been in previous years. But we need to kind of catch that and drive that momentum forward. So the first thing that we're looking for is volunteers. We really need lots of volunteers. We've got lots of things to do. To give you some idea of the kind of things, it's all really basic. Get your sleeves rolled up and get them orchestra up. The Cleveleys Square tramway area tends to get neglected because it's out on a lane, but it's very visible. Not just to people on foot, but also to people that are in cars and things. The bus station is a story all of its own. The clock shelter's the same. It's full of this because everybody goes across the road with the fish and chips and sits in it and eats it and then dumps it. We're going to do some weeding at the clock garden. The grey pots at Home Bargains need weeding. The grey pots on the prom need weeding. The roughly road border is always full of weeds. They grow like weeds then. The alley around New Look where the parking machine is always in need of attention. The alley at Marks and Spencer's is another story, and so on, and so on, and so on. So that's the kind of stuff that we do. So you definitely don't come dressed up, you need your own clothes on. And it's good fun. It is good fun. So we did a recruitment day on the 3rd of January at the Dickens. And quite a few people came up. There's a few faces here I recognise from that. And we handed out some volunteer forms, Kevin. Oh, what a coincidence. So what we've started doing is putting together a kind of a list of people that are wanting to get involved and volunteer on a regular basis. I mean, anybody is welcome to just come along once in a year and just lend a hand and do it whenever you're free to be able to do it. But what we really need is people that want to be part of the gang and that are prepared to get involved and join in and do stuff on a regular basis. So that's just to get some idea. I mean, I know Liz likes gardening, but if I don't know you, we don't know what your particular interests or strengths are. So we're trying to gauge who we've got to do what, and then we can work out what we can actually do and what capacity we've got to deliver. So we're putting together a list of people, and then I can keep you in the loop, send you an email and tell you when we're doing sessions, when we're doing meetups, when we've got a fundraising event that we need somebody to come and help with, all that kind of stuff. But more than anything, it's good fun. It's good fun, isn't it?
And you make friends.
Yeah, exactly. You probably, well, you might have wondered, but no, I'm not local originally. So there's loads of people that are new to the area that come and join groups like this, and it's a brilliant way to make friends. That's how we've all made friends. And we're a bit naughty, we're very loud, we're always laughing. There's very little falling out, is there? We don't, we don't, no, touch wood, found me some wood. We don't entertain falling out, it's not on our agenda. And we have a good time and we enjoy doing what we're doing, and that's what you get from it as a volunteer, because at the end of the day it's voluntary, and if you're not enjoying it, you're not going to come back and do it. So I think that's all my talking. So now I'm open to questions. Would you like to add anything, Liz?
Yeah. Can you hear me at the back? Yeah, good. I've got a very loud voice because I used to lecture to people, so in big lecture theatres. I think, first thing is Jane keeps talking about we. Well, there is a big sort of volunteer group, but a lot of it is Jane and the people that Jane knows and has made contact with and is networking. So through Jane, we work with the council and with other organisations, and I think, without Jane, the thing sort of falls apart. So that was the first thing.
Oh, thank you, darling. I'll pay you later.
just like that. The other thing is, when you look at these forms, don't think you have to be an expert in anything, because none of us are experts in anything. We all help each other going along. So if you want to do gardening but you don't know a weed from a rose, then don't worry about that, because there are plenty of people around that can help you learn the difference between weeds and roses, and we'll all work together to do that kind of thing. Okay. What else was I going to say? Yeah, Jane makes things sound very simple, but if you think about things like getting the lights done for Christmas, it was actually a hell of a lot of work for Jane to do, as well as other volunteers, but it was mainly Jane that did it. We sat in meetings for 2 years being told that we couldn't put lights up on these poles, and then I think it was actually October.
It was autumn.
It was autumn, yeah, when we were told by the same person that had been telling us that we couldn't put these things up, saying, oh yeah, of course you can. And that was when we just thought, oh right, okay, so we've got 3 months to get things up for Christmas. And through Jane and her contacts, we managed to do that. And people did come along and say, oh, is that it? Well, it is just a string of lights at the moment, but it's a start, and it was an awful lot of work to get that done. But if we can all get behind that and all work together, then we can make this a really big event. Just at Christmas or winter or whatever we want to do, we can make some really good events to go. And it's all about making Cleveleys just a wonderful place to live and to visit, and that's what we're trying to do, and with your help we can make it even better. As Jane said, when you talk to people, and we were at a meeting the other week, they said, well, what's the USP? What's the unique selling points of Cleveleys? And we just said, well, it's a nice town. They said, well, what do you want to do with it? I said, well, to make it even nicer. And that's, everyone says that Cleveleys is a lovely lovely place to visit. So it's about making that an even nicer place for more people to visit. Okay, thank you.
Because, just following on from that, if people continue to use our town, the shops stop, everybody benefits as a result of that, and when I'm 90 and doddering over my litter picking barrow, I'll still be able to buy a loaf of bread in the town where I live, because I don't want to end up, the town where I came from in Yorkshire is geographically almost identical to Cleveleys. Long straight high street, wide on one side, narrow on the other. As a child, we could buy anything you wanted, furniture, just like Cleveleys. Furniture, food, you could do the lot, clothes, everything, market, full job lot. And by the time I moved to Cleveleys, it was like a ghost town. And I really don't want that to happen here. And it's about keeping the town economically viable, which means that we've got a town that we can use. And it also brings us together as well as a group. That's it.
Jane,
Yes.
I know you're talking about volunteers and cleaning up the town, which is all well and good, and people coming into town and they come here to shop. But there's so many shops closing down. What's happening there?
In which
In
respect?
Cleveleys. In Cleveleys, we've got sales closing down.
Well,
I mean, when people come from Blackpool to see us now, they'll be thinking, oh, I'm not going there next year, they're closing down.
Well, Cleveleys, believe it or not, has actually consistently got a lower vacancy rate than national average, and I can't quite remember the exact statistics, but it's certainly got one of the lowest ones in this area. So at any given time, there are always fewer empty shops here than there are in other places. With regard to M&Co, obviously that's a national chain. That's a consequence of everything that's gone on in the last few years. And that is completely outside our control. And anybody that sees us closing down sign at M&Co will know that it's the chain, not the town. And the other thing that's important to understand as well is that the local authority has absolutely no bearing whatsoever on who comes into which shop and whether or not they're stood empty. Because individual shops, the premises are owned by a landlord, and quite a lot of them in Cleveleys are owned by pension companies and foreign investors because it's lucrative. So the building is owned by a landlord. The landlord usually rents it out through a property company of some description to whoever is prepared to pay the rent. When we were struggling to try and get the market going last Christmas in here, I actually rang the agent that had got at the time the empty Argos building on their books and asked them whether or not there would be any scope for us to use it for a pop-up market. And his answer was, well, we've got a national charity that's already interested in it. We're progressing negotiations, which obviously turned out to be gas protection. And the rent is 120 grand a year. Now, we're running a community market on the same string and ceiling wax that we do everything on. So it was broken in no conversation. It was just a case of, well, if you've got 120 grand a year, yeah, you can rent it.
Do the landlords not pay on an empty building?
I don't know.
Oh.
My own business, I've always worked from home. So I've never paid business rates, I've never rented a property, and I know the gist of it, but the actual details of it and the fine print is beyond me. I'm not sure.
Like I was just thinking, after 3 months of the property being empty, I think they should be charged full price for sort of having an empty building, these landlords, because I think they just leave them empty because they're not paying anything.
But if anything like that were to be done, that would be a government level decision that is not something that we could do within our own
Understand that, yeah,
area.
understand that.
I mean, if I were in charge, I'd insist that they all tidy them up.
One of the things that we were looking at was using the empty shops for pop-up markets.
Yeah, which
But
would have
when
been
we
good,
spoke
yeah.
When we spoke to the council, because they're not the landlords, all they can do is give us the property information and the name of the landlord, and for us to get in touch with them to see if they'll let us have it at a peppercorn rent.
And this was last week.
I know, but it's a shame the council can't charge the landlord for it being empty then. You know, making the place look untidy.
Anyone for any more? Amanda?
Coming back to shops,
Yes.
how do you sort of at least put pictures or info, or rather than just having blank empty shops, because other people do that, could we use that for at least, you know, sort of making it a little bit more attractive to people whilst they are empty?
Well, you're back to landlords. You're back
Pay
to.
for that then?
Well, you'd have if you said right, Evanco is empty.
Yeah.
Argos was empty. It looked nice. So what can we do with it to make it look better? First of all, you would need to go to the letting agent and find out whether they will be prepared to broker on your behalf, because that's your first question. If they're not interested and don't want to do it, they'll not push it and pursue it. And they would need to go back to the owner and see whether or not they would allow it. And then you'd need to get access. No doubt somebody would want a risk assessment and want to know whether or not you're insured, which we are. And then you would need to pay for whatever you were going to put up. So if you were doing something that you could cobble together yourself on sheets of A3 paper, then obviously the cost of that would be minimal. But if you wanted to put a big graphic in the window like they do in shops like on Bankay Street in Blackpool, there's quite a few got big vinyls on the window. You'd be talking multiple hundreds of pounds to do something like that, because it's large format printing and it needs applying done properly or it comes off.
Unless you get sponsored or...
So the whole, I mean, it sounds so obvious and so blindingly notable. But the whole process of being able to do that, just to make one shop look tidy for a short-term period of time, would be quite a lot of work and reasonably expensive. And that's the problem that you've got. So that's why we've tried to fit everything that we're doing around things that we know that we can achieve. Because otherwise you just spend forever chasing yourself around in circles, and the town, the community that live here, see nothing. And they say, well, what they've been doing, there's nothing happened. When in actual fact you've been doing thoughts. Yeah.
Have you got any plans to reinstate the mural on the bus station?
Well, it's funny that you should say that. It's funny that you should say that. Anybody that's brand new to the area perhaps doesn't know the saga of the bus station, but we work with Blackpool College, and some of the students did some artwork which enabled my dad to do the print-ready artwork to go on a huge mural in the bus station, which probably was about the width of this room actually, when I think about it. Lovely. It was a lovely community event and all the rest of it. And then within about 3-4 weeks, the youth of the town decided that they were going to make it their mission to systematically wreck it. So this graphic had been done in panel sections. I can't remember if there were 5 or 6 or 7, but it was in pieces. So they started off by graffitiing, and when they got away with that, they started levering them off. We didn't actually paint on the wall because we didn't want to wreck the wall for perpetuity, because then you're creating another job. So it had been screwed onto the wall with screws. So systematically over a period of probably about 6 or 7 weeks, they literally just tile levered it off one way or another, graffiti's all over it, wrecked all the other work that had been done in the bus station, and just generally left us all feeling thoroughly annoyed. Eventually, the ringleader was taken to task, but let's just say that it went on for a long time and could have been stamped on. So obviously we're really reticent about doing anything that is going to attract the same kind of behaviour. But we're conscious that you can't not do things because there's a risk that something might happen. Obviously those youngsters have grown up, moved on and all the rest of it. But there is, you know, there's an element of antisocial behaviour from youths in every town that you come to. So we think we might have got a plan for addressing that issue. So watch this space. Watch this space. I'd like to get it back up.
Is it possible that if that mural goes up, it will be properly more secure with anti-tamper screws or such?
Oh, it will. Don't.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Because that would be a big
Yeah.
effort.
Yeah, it's
I'd
a
really love to see that mural back up.
Well, it makes such a difference.
Definitely.
Because that bus station's great.
Yeah.
So that's on our list of places to brighten up this year.